Verkhotурье is an old city in the Urals which was founded 4 centuries ago. A long time ago, it took over a month to get here from Moscow, a journey of over 2,000 kilometers by horse-drawn cart. And pilgrims from all over Russia traveled this long and difficult road in order to pray to the Orthodox sacred relics here. In this area, literally every inch of land is saturated with the Orthodox faith. The old churches and monasteries which have preserved for centuries the relics of saints and miracle-working icons, healing springs and cells where the lives of hermit elders passed in silence and prayer. For a long time, the old town has been revered as one of the most important religious centers of the region. Following the pilgrims, I want to head off to the religious sites of the Urals. My journey starts here, in Verkhoturье, on the left bank of the Tura River. It's in this part of the settlement that the most sacred artifacts of this old town are kept. It's located 306 kilometers from the city of Yekaterinburg. You can reach it by car or by bus. The central city of the Urals is just over 2 hours by plane from Moscow. Travelers come to the banks of the Tura River to see the Holy Nikolaevsky Monastery and Holy Intercession Convent. From here, I'll go to the village of Merkushina, where the heavenly patron of the Urals lived, the righteous Saint Simeon. My path also takes me to the banks of the Akhtai River, where a spring of healing water bursts from the ground. The fate of Verkhoturье is inseparably connected with the history of the unification of the Siberian lands with Russia. The explorers mainly traveled along rivers. This was convenient for the first explorers, but difficult, time-consuming, and expensive for the settlers. A land route was required for traveling on carts in summer and on sleighs in winter. At the end of the 16th century, a nationwide competition was announced to find the easiest and shortest path beyond the Ural Mountains. At that time, they were simply called stone. And one man said that he knew a road that was 200 versts shorter than the path of the famous military leader and conqueror of Siberia, the Ataman Yermak. This man was the peasant Artemy Babinov. In fact, Babinov simply followed the path of tribes who'd lived here for centuries. The ancient path from the European part of Russia to Siberia became the main state road, but it was still named the Babinov Highway in honor of the clever peasant. Over less than 3 years, with 40 people using only axes and spades, Babinov laid a road out of 280 kilometers from the town of Solikamsk to Verkhovье, which reduced the length of the road to Siberia by 7 times. In 1598, Verkhotурье was built on the new road, and it so happened that the twists and turns of the history of the town subsequently depended on this highway. For Verkhotурье, which Tsar Fyodor Yanovich ordered to be built, this picturesque cliff was chosen. It rises above the Tura River, hence the name Verkhotурье, above the Tura. There had to be a customs office in the city, for it was through here, along the new road, that the flow of goods passed from Siberia to the central part of Russia, furs, timber, and precious stones. And there's a curious historical incident involving the construction of the customs office. Initially, it was decided that the customs office be built here on the cliff. The view is excellent and the river lies spread out before you. But there's little space for a fortress here. There really is hardly any room to move. Then it was decided to move the construction to the Trinity Rock, where the town stands today. In fact, 5 kilometers from here. But the customs office was moved in secret from the authorities in the capital. Moscow's far away, and decisions take a long time. So, for 2 years, on paper, the Verkhoturye customs office was located in a completely different place than where it actually was. In the 17th century, this town had strategic importance for Russia. Merchants, servants, and traders were only supposed to travel through this town, and it was strictly forbidden to travel by side roads. The customs office was harsh. In order to keep a close track of the supply of the main Siberian wealth, furs to Europe, the furs cost incredible sums. All attempts to avoid the customs office were punished severely. Those who were caught trying to drive around it were beaten with truncheons and had their property confiscated. The main task of the Verkhoturye customs office was to stop furs being taken from Siberia. This process was controlled very strictly, and the instructions allowed them to check everyone thoroughly, and even make checks in docks down to the clothes on their back, so to speak. According to custom books that have survived, the flow of goods through the Verkhoturye customs office was enormous, over 1,500 carts a year. This town, unlike other Russian settlements, brought a colossal profit to the state treasury. Here it is, one of the main riches of Siberia, sable fur. Soft, fluffy, and very warm. In the Russian Empire, coats of sable were given as awards for achievements and services. Sable was valued more highly than gold and silver, while in Siberia itself fur was cheaper than ordinary flour. The wooden town often burned down, and each new head of the town, the military governor, started from scratch by building the prison. And so in the early 18th century, by decree of Peter the Great, stone building was permitted here, although it was even forbidden to build houses in Moscow, as the Tsar had the plan to build St. Petersburg, and the best builders were needed in the future capital of Russia. The Verkhoturye fortress, which in 1712 was built on the banks of the wide river, became the first stone building of Verkhoturye and the last stone Kremlin in the country. A section of the eastern fortress wall has been preserved to the present day. The Verkhoturye Kremlin was supposed to become the symbol of state power in the Urals, and so to build it, Moscow stonemasons were summoned here specially, and the Moscow Kremlin was used as the model. Near the front wooden gates lined with iron stands the Holy Trinity Cathedral, which was built in the Moscow Baroque style. Its snow-white walls are decorated by a lavish ornamentation. The 40-meter bell tower not only served for ringing bells, but also as an observation post. In the flourishing town, other churches were also built. Churches and monasteries were built as a single religious ensemble along the river. The picture was particularly magnificent in winter, when among the white snow, the numerous domes shone with their gold, reflecting the frozen Tura in their mirror-like surface. In the early 20th century, in Verkhoturye, with its population of 4,000, there were 16 churches and monasteries. 59 bells called the townspeople to prayer. No other town in the Urals had so many holy places. In the 18th century, changes took place in the life of Verkhoturye. A new town appeared in the Urals, named in honor of the Empress Catherine, Yekaterinburg, and the other road to Siberia, which was more convenient and shorter, lay through it. The value of furs also began to drop when metal money appeared in Russia. The Verkhoturye customs office lost its importance, and life in the town began to quieten down. But in the 18th century, the relics of the righteous St. Simeon were brought from the small village of Merkushina, and thousands of pilgrims from all over Russia touched them in order to be healed. The flow of believers inspired new meaning in the existence of the old Urals town. The first Orthodox monastery appeared in Verkhoturye in 1604. It was founded by Father Ion, who came to the Urals from the central part of Russia. A century later, the relics of the righteous Saint Simeon were brought here. Since that day, the Holy Nikolaevsky Monastery, built in honor of Nikolai the Wonder Worker, has been the religious center of the Urals. The word monastery comes from the Greek monos, which means one, thus expressing the human desire to leave behind the vanities of the world. The life of the Holy Nikolaevsky Monastery is hidden from outside eyes, though these walls have been the center of attraction for hundreds and thousands of people throughout the ages. The gateway church at the entrance to the monastery greets the pilgrims with the faces of the saints. This is a special Ural school. Look at all the gold here. In the Urals, the precious metal was mined and it was used to decorate the icons. When it was founded, the Holy Nikolaevsky Monastery was practically impoverished, and its founder, Father Ion, personally asked Boris Godunov for assistance. The pious ruler sent a cart of grain to the town and ordered the Verkhoturye military governor to provide the monks with all the help they needed. Building the monastery was tough, as the monks could not only not afford building materials, they couldn't even afford candle wax. The monastery was helped by local military governors who allocated considerable sums from customs takings, and under Catherine the Great the monastery became state-run and received 350 golden Tsarist rubles from the treasury every year. The church had a strategic task for lands that had recently been joined to Russia, to convert the local population of pagans to the Orthodox faith. The monks of the Holy Nikolaevsky Monastery became true missionaries. It must be said that there were almost no conflicts in the 400-year history of the monastery between the pagan population and the Russians here. So after Godunov, the Shuiskys and then the Romanovs constantly looked after the monastery. They always tried to care for the monastery, at least to ensure that it continued its existence, even when during the secularization reforms of Catherine the Great, the intercession convent was closed, but our monastery naturally was not closed by anyone. The museum exhibition contains the entire complex history of the monastery. One of the most valuable exhibits in the collection is a unique book, an instructive gospel, which is almost as old as the monastery itself. It's 595 pages long, and the text is in Church Slavonic. The book was published in Moscow, but it's not known for certain how it got to Verkhoturye. Despite the numerous fires and trials of time, the paper and the leather embossed binding have been wonderfully preserved. In the monastery, this collection is considered to be the first Orthodox museum of modern Russia. Here you can see the dress of a monk of the 17th century, the personal items of superiors who ran the monastery in different periods, and items from churches that have not survived to the present day.